Welcome back to the Philosophy Lab, where we are continuing our ruthless mission to clean up the universe. Today, we are tackling Section 50 of Word and Object by W.V.O. Quine, and the title of this section is Entia Non Grata. This is a Latin phrase that plays on the diplomatic term persona non grata, which means an unwelcome person. In our case, we are talking about unwelcome entities. These are the things that clutter up our reality. The things that language tricks us into believing in, but which serve no real purpose in a scientific worldview. We are going to act like the Marie Kondo of metaphysics and ask, does this object spark joy, or does it just spark confusion? If it sparks confusion, we are throwing it into the trash can of non-existence. We have already established that our primary tool for this cleanup operation is canonical notation. We use the logic of quantification to audit our commitments. It is like a financial audit, but for existence. We look at the values of our bound variables and ask ourselves, do we really need to admit these things into our universe? Economy is a major consideration here. We want a theory that is simple and efficient. We have already grudgingly admitted physical objects because they are close to our sensory stimulation. We have admitted classes because they are incredibly useful for mathematics. But now, we have to look at the borderline cases, the drifters and the grifters of the ontological world. Let's start with the easiest targets, the sakes and the behalves. You have heard these words a million times. I did it for your sake. I am speaking on his behalf. If you look at the grammar superficially, it looks like sake is a noun. It sits in the sentence just like the word dog or car. So, a naive philosopher might say, well, there must be objects in the world called sakes. But this is absurd. No one wants to defend the existence of a sake. The argument for excluding them is instructive because it sets the pattern for the harder cases. The word sake only appears in the cliché, for the sake of. It is a defective noun. It is actually just part of a complex preposition. We do not analyze it as a relationship between a person and a ghostly object called a sake. We just bundle the whole phrase into a relative term. This is our first victory in decluttering. Now, let's move to something slightly harder. Units of measure, miles, minutes, and degrees. These look a lot more like real nouns than sake does. We say, the distance is 5 miles. It feels like we are counting objects. 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 miles. But Quine asks us to pause and apply the pressure of logic. Are miles objects? If they are objects, are all miles alike? Is the mile between Boston and New York the same as the mile between London and Paris? If they are alike, how can they count as many? How can you have 200 of them if they are identical? And if they are not identical, what distinguishes the first mile of the road from the second mile? This leads to absurd interrogation. The solution is to realize that terms like mile and degree Fahrenheit are defective nouns. They are not full-fledged terms that should be admitted as values of our variables. We do not need a universe containing physical objects and numbers and miles. We can get rid of the miles by absorbing them into the predicate. Instead of saying the length of Manhattan equals 11 miles, we say the length in miles of Manhattan is 11. Do you see what happened there? We created a relationship called length in miles. This relationship holds between two things. One is Manhattan, which is a physical object. The other is the number 11, which is an abstract object. We keep the physical object and we keep the number, but the mile itself vanishes into the grammar of the relationship. This leaves us recognizing numbers as objects which Quine is okay with because they are nearly as useful as classes. But we have successfully exercised the unit of measure as an independent entity. Now, we have to deal with a much more dangerous category: unactualized possibles. These are the possible objects that do not actually exist. The possible hotel on that corner. The possible church that might be built. Philosophers have spilt oceans of ink worrying about these things. The problem, again, is identity. If I imagine a possible fat man in the doorway, and you imagine a possible bald man in the doorway, are we imagining the same possible man? What if he is bald and fat? There is no way to settle the identity of these ghostly figures. Quine says we should cut through this fog. We do not need to populate our universe with billions of possible objects waiting to be born. We can handle this with modal operators. We can say it is possible that there is a church. We talk about the possibility of the sentence, not the existence of a shadow object. The notion of possible objects is often encouraged by two philosophical mistakes. The first mistake comes from verbs like hunting and wanting. We discussed this before. If I am hunting a lion, but there are no lions, what am I hunting? It feels like I must be hunting a possible lion. But we solve this by treating hunting as a propositional attitude or a specific kind of behavior that doesn't require a direct object. We do not need a surrogate object to make the sentence true. The second mistake comes from negative existence. When I say Pegasus does not exist, what am I talking about? If Pegasus is nothing, then my sentence is about nothing. The sentence Fifth Avenue is 6 miles long is true because of Fifth Avenue and because of the way we define the mile and because of the way we use language. Positing an extra entity called a fact as an intermediary explains nothing. It is just adding a middleman who takes a cut of our intellectual profit without doing any work. In ordinary usage, the word fact is fine. It is often just a way of saying true sentence, or it is used for emphasis. We say that is a fact to mean that is true, or we use it to avoid repeating a long sentence. We say, I arrived late and that fact annoyed him. Here, that fact is just a shorthand reference. We can paraphrase all of this away without admitting facts into our ontology. We do not need to include facts in the list of things that exist alongside atoms and numbers. So, where does this leave us? It leaves us with a leaner, meaner universe. We have stripped away the sakes, the behalves, the miles, the possible objects, and the facts. We are left with physical objects, classes, and numbers. This is a universe we can manage. This is a universe that fits into our logic without creating contradictions or identity crises. It is a philosophical, clean room. The lesson here is to be vigilant. Language is a virus that wants to multiply entities. It wants to turn every noun into an object. It wants to turn every figure of speech into a part of reality. But as philosophers and scientists, we must resist. We must use the razor of canonical notation to cut away the fat. We must be strict about what we admit to our table. Because if we let the Entia Non Grata in, they will never leave and they will eat all our food. So the next time someone tells you it is a fact that they did it for your sake, ask them to show you the fact and ask them to show you the sake. You might lose a friend, but you will save your ontology. Thanks for joining me on this cleanup mission. Stay logical, stay skeptical, and I will see you in the next video.